Lorax, Brave is another one of those films that people seem to be really split about. While I can't think of anyone who hates this movie, there is that large number of people that find it greatly disappointing in comparison to Pixar's previous films. And to be completely honest, I think the incredibly high standards that we give the studio are a little unfair. Don't get me wrong, I love Pixar and they have made some incredible films, but if we keep expecting the studio to produce a masterpiece each time, we'll just end up disappointing ourselves when we go see a Pixar movie that's not exactly perfect. On top of that, I like Brave. A lot. Okay, so it's not quite up to par with such Pixar films as Up or Toy Story, but you know what? For what it is, it's a pretty darn good movie. Here's the premise. Merida, an archery-obsessed princess living in medieval Scotland, seeks to break free from the princess-like lifestyle enforced by her mother and live a more carefree life of adventure. When the conflict reaches peak levels as Merida refuses to choose one of 3 suitors for an arranged marriage, she runs away and comes across an old witch whom she convinces to put a spell on her mother in order to change her future. But much to her horror, the spell turns her mother into a bear, which is bad because Merida's father has sworn vengeance on a bear that took his leg. So Merida and her mother must find a way to break the curse before it is too late. So why exactly do people not like this movie as much as Pixar's past films? Well, I can't speak for everyone, but one of the major complaints I've noticed is that it's basically Pixar telling a Disney story, borrowing several elements from previous Disney films, such as The Rebellious Princess and so forth. But why is that necessarily a bad thing? Disney's made great movies in the past. In fact, if it wasn't for Disney, Pixar wouldn't even exist, nor would the animation industry for that matter. So I really don't see much of a problem with Pixar doing a Disney-style movie as long as they do it well. And I think they do it rather well here. In fact, I really like how they put a spin on some of these archetypes and do something different with them so they aren't predictable cliches. For example, Merida, like princesses in other Disney movies, strongly opposes getting married. But while the previous princesses usually ended up with some romantic interest by the end, Merida remains single throughout the entire movie. In fact, romance is barely even focused on at all in this movie. Okay, that's pretty cool. Also, a witch in this movie casts a spell that has a major impact on the rest of the movie. So, like other Disney movies, she must be the main villain, right? Actually, no, she isn't. As a matter of fact, she's reluctant to create a spell, only doing so when bribed by Merida. That's also pretty neat. Okay, this next one doesn't borrow completely from Disney, but many have noticed the transformation of Merida's mother into a bear like that of a similar instance in a certain less than appreciated Disney movie. Yes, but here's the thing. In this movie, she's not only physically becoming a bear, but she's also starting to mentally become one as well. Now that's downright cool. Even Doug Walker, who had mixed feelings to this film altogether, thought this plot development was a pretty good move. Okay, Disney comparisons to the side, what else is noteworthy about this movie? Well, I think one of the biggest upsides is the animation. Yeah, I know it's no surprise to call Pixar's animation great. I mean, they've basically invented every computer animation technique known to man. But my god, this has got to be some of the studio's best animation to date. Look at those backgrounds. Look at those textures. Oh hell, look at Merida's hair. They had to invent an entirely new program just to create every single strand of hair on that head, and boy was it worth it. It is just gorgeous to look at. Billy Cannoli as Merida's father is just perfect. I mean, after all, it's basically a crime to not put Billy Cannoli in a film set in Scotland, and his performance alone makes the character so entertaining. It's his relationship with the leaders of the neighboring clans, however, that truly brings out the movie's funniest material. The interaction between the four reminds me of a heated sibling rivalry taken to dangerously competitive levels, and the results are just hilarious. Speaking of the neighboring clans, I also like how the suitors aren't depicted as perfect Prince Charmings, which each having their own little quirks, like one speaking some language that I won't even bother to look up, one who's a Gaston wannabe with crowds of adoring female fans, and one who's completely incompetent when his only successes are accidental. They're not much, but hey, they're better than most of Disney's Prince characters. Also, as I said before, I can't resist pantomime characters, and Merida's 3 younger triple brothers are no exception. Every time they're on screen, they always make me laugh to some extent, even if they're not completely human in some scenes. As for the witch, even though she only appears for 2 scenes, and in one she's not actually in the scene, she's still pretty memorable. As I said before, I like how they've chosen not to make her a villain instead of an eccentric and somewhat insane woman with a preference of wood carving over witchcraft. That I thought was pretty cool. But I think the movie's highlight is the relationship established between Merida and her mother. Just this relationship existing is already a godsend. Most Disney movies and other films in general either have the mother or stepmother figure either completely evil, killed off, or lacking any major plot relevance whatsoever. In this movie, the mother is probably the second most important character, and it's her relationship with her daughter that is the real focus of this movie, and I think it is pulled out without any hitch whatsoever. Despite the medieval setting, the conflict that arises between the two is one I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, and in the end, it shows that despite all problems, the bond between them is virtually unbreakable, much like how a real mother-daughter relationship is. It's this relationship that is meant to hold the movie together, and personally, I think it does better than what was intended. I guess I could go on and on about this movie, but frankly, I don't feel the need to. I think it should be pretty clear that Break is another solid effort for the nation's leading computer animation studio. Does it have its flaws? I suppose so, but to me, the things in this movie that work well work unbelievably well. If you're one of those people that expects a bullseye every time from Pixar, then I can't say whether or not you'll enjoy this movie. But still, I highly recommend it. It's not only one of my favorite animated films of the year, but it's also one of my favorite films of this year, period.
No more fighting! Show a little decorum!
Feast your eyes!
If you had the chance to change your fate, would you?